Welcome back, everybody. Guys, before we start the next session, I'd like to introduce Graham Mulligans from Gallagher. Gallagher is sponsoring this conference stream, and even though they could have pulled out their sponsorship when we went virtual, moving from face-to-face to virtual, they continue to show their support and support this stream. So it's really great. So I welcome Graham to give us some insight into what Gallagher does and what it's all about. Over to you, mate.
Thank you, Luke. And good morning to you all. In 2019, we ran the Gallagher Landcare fencing grants, supporting 13 conservation fencing and grazing management projects. Some of these projects are protecting the western swamp tortoise habitat from feral peak incursion, and another providing a haven for both sheep and the southern brown bandicoot to thrive. We've just announced 14 recipients of the 2021 fencing grants, and we are proud to return to this year's conference as the sponsor of the Sustainable Agricultural Stream. Gallagher is leading the way in animal management solutions, offering a full range of electric fencing, wireless water monitoring, livestock weighing, with electronic ID systems, all collecting data for informed decision-making. So after listening to farming forecaster John Clem, we welcome you to drop into our virtual booth and chat to myself or Ben Winter about how a Gallagher solution can help improve your on-farm sustainability and help you achieve your conservation outcomes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Graham, for that, mate. And again, everyone, go see the guys down at the booth, the Gallagher booth. It's not an online booth, obviously. The guys work around in communities all around Australia, so you can connect up with your local territory manager. Moving right along to our next session, digital tools. Sorry, guys. Digital tools to support decision-making and planning are worth the weight in gold if they provide the user with an opportunity for improvements in their land and livestock, which result in improvements in productivity and financial gains. John Clem from Tablelands Farming Systems, who will be giving us the landowner's perspective, and Dr. Patrick Mitchell from CSIRO will outline the environmental and economic benefits of the cloud-based system support tool, Farming Forecaster. Over to you, John.
Thank you. Hi, I'm joining you from New South Wales Southern Tablelands in New South Wales, where I farm sheep and cattle with my family. I've had a long association with national and local Landcare. I'm currently Vice Chairman of the Tablelands Farming System known as TFS. TFS is a grower organisation providing localised farming information and delivering training and extension activities to improve the way farmers operate. We host a soil probe on our farm, and you can see that soil probe now. That's it in the middle of the paddock. The probe is a long tube, a metal tube that goes 60 centimetres into the soil. It measures soil temperature, soil moisture at various depths and intervals. It then uses solar power. You can see the solar power there, to upload this data via the mobile phone network. The live data is then fed directly into the Farming Forecaster tool, which is hosted by CSIRO. The data then goes to your mobile phone, tablet, or computer, so we can download this live data at any time on any of those devices. Probes have been used in cropping enterprises for many years, but this is the first time they've been used in the grazing industry for forecasting pasture growth. TFS and Monero Farming Systems introduced soil probes to southern New South Wales about 5 years ago. Both groups are funded by member subscription, federal, state and local land service grants and industry sponsorship. This specific project was funded by the federal government's National Landcare program with a Smart Farming Partnership grant. The idea to use the data gathered by the probes for a tool like Farming Forecaster began years ago with a conversation between Phil Graham, an advisor from YAS, CSIRO scientists, and Southeastern Local Land Services. A working group was formed with Phil Graham from Graham Consulting, CSIRO, Monero Farming Systems, and TFS. And in 2019, the Farming Forecaster tool came on live. It was developed by Ciro and Vicky Lane and Stephen Van Rees from Square V, located in Kennington in Victoria. Farming Forecast is a decision support tool that brings together soil moisture, predicted pasture availability, livestock performance, and local weather data into a single platform. Using leading-edge technology, Farming Forecast provides a roadmap of pasture availability and predicted livestock performance the next 3 to 4 months in advance. The soil probe on my farm provides me with valuable information and enables me to make informed science, very important, science-based decisions. The probe provides information on soil pasture at depths of 10 to 60 centimetres. The combination of the moisture and Ciro predictability modelling helps me to estimate the amount of growth expected over the next 3 to 4 months, helping me take out the guesswork. The tool also predicts critical ground cover information to avoid land degradation and overstocking. The success of the program is due to a workable partnership between scientists, farming communities, and government. So further information can be gathered from the TFS website or Monero website. I'm really pleased now to introduce you to Dr. Patrick Mitchell, who's the Senior Research Scientist with Ciro Smart Agriculture. And Patrick has been pivotal in the developing of Farming Forecaster. And Pat is joining us today from his office in Tasmania. Thanks, you. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, John. Yeah, it's really great to be able to share this this work with everyone here today at the Landcare conference. I'm going to give a perspective of sort of work I'm doing, how this project fits in and its relevance to landholders and the decisions they make. I come into this project with a strong interest in developing information systems that assist farming communities with decision making, particularly those decisions related to managing climate. So it's an exciting place to work at the moment, given farming is affected by many overlapping drivers, and those drivers around productivity are affected by climate being one of those, but certainly not the only one. We know that weather patterns that comprise our climate can seem pretty random. And so the way farmers make decisions in response to this supposed randomness can sometimes be thought of as playing the pokies, when in reality, of course, most farmers are making their next moves with regard to a lot of different factors. They're aware of their previous conditions, their current situation, and they have at hand different predictions about the future. So this is more akin to playing a game of chess. My colleague Peter Heyman at Sardi presents this interesting analogy, and I find it a nice starting point to think about how to make how farmers and landholders make decisions and how I can make some of my work more relevant. We know that climate change is happening now. So it can be argued that adapting our farming systems to the future starts with managing our current climate variability. I'll just present this example here in this slide, an annual rainfall pattern from a location in the southwest of Western Australia. And it really just shows the well-documented decline in rainfall in this particular area, and how that current farming systems have already seen some pretty strong signals from climate change and are having to adapt to this now. So managing landscapes through managing climate variability is a really important theme of what I'll be talking about today. And managing your next move in farming depends on what your upcoming season is looking like more importantly. And this can sometimes seem like riding a roller coaster between wet and dry periods. Like the cartoon here gives an example of the classic El Nino roller coaster, where there's periods of rain And then before you know it, we're facing drought conditions, and it seems like there's just a never-ending switch between the two. Seasonal forecasts can help farmers plan and get on the front foot in the face of this variability. Well, despite this type of forecasting being available, and it falling well short of being a trusted crystal ball of knowing exactly what's going to happen into the future, seasonal forecasting is really good at helping shift the odds for a particular decision. So what I mean by that is, instead of whether it's going to be wet or dry being a 50-50 sort of call, a seasonal forecast that has some skill can help reduce that to maybe a 30-70 kind of odds that will really help with farm planning and management. And what this does in livestock systems, and which is the real focus of this discussion today, is this means confidence. And confidence when making decisions is critical, whether that's decision around stocking in the upcoming season, managing that cover on the land, and timely feed budgeting. So how does the science help? CSIRO has a long history of building what we refer to as simulation models. And these models have been built in livestock systems. And what we can do is we can combine information around what the weather forecast is telling us, or the seasonal forecasts, the current observations, and we can build a live forecast by combining the two to tell us about pasture and livestock conditions. And we can do this to reduce the uncertainty for decisions and help farmers plan and manage that climate variability. So I'll discuss today specifically how that science is the backbone of the next generation forecasting project, which has delivered this farming forecast application. As John has mentioned, the project that we present here is all about a strong partnership that is driven by the farming groups and their members. It brings in the local extension specialists, the consultants and scientists, and team up with delivering it through the web developers. So there's a lot of different perspectives, disciplines combining here. One objective was to help provide more than just a purely climate-based forecast and implement a pasture monitoring and forecast service. A key advance in this project was taking the information that had already been delivered to the groups involved and their members as seasonal outlooks, as a sort of a static report that's done twice a year with the interpretation and the real context given by those consultants in those regions. And these were important for farmers, but it didn't constitute a real live system and real current information. So we helped to deliver this real-time system, and it helped give a picture on the past, current, and future conditions. Farming Forecaster is based around approximately 40 sites that act as sentinels, and in that way, the producers can look at a particular site or location near them, and they're the probe sites that John had given a description on earlier. They can look at one of those locations to gauge what is happening at their farm. And I've just given a map here to give you a bit of an idea of the Southeast Local Land Service area in New South Wales and some of those probe sites. So what we're doing in CSIRO at the moment in digital agriculture is really trying to deliver these sorts of tools. But what's really important about our work is making sure this is informed digital agriculture. And to do this, these partnerships are absolutely critical. We've invested significant time in understanding where the value of this information is for the producer. And one thing we're keen to avoid is this shelfware idea when it comes to delivering decision supports tools in ag. And that's the tools that we deliver maintain currency, maintain a life beyond a project, and don't just get used for a couple of years and sit on the shelf. The project team engaged a user experience specialist and part of the web development team, and that was really helpful for us to make sure that this farming forecaster tool really reflected producers' decision-making frameworks. Of course, there is considerable variation in the requirements and levels of understanding of particular groups of farmers, and that we try to accommodate some of that variability. And if anyone's looked at seasonal forecasts, they'd know that it's particularly challenging in understanding and presenting probabilistic sorts of information. So we have tried a number of approaches to help get across that barrier of making that information available. And that one strategy was to present both visual information and translate that into text-based information. So this is just a screen grab of the farming forecaster. As you can see, it's got a number of different pieces of information on it, which I'll go into a little bit. But to date, it's had over 30,000 visitors, and that's earlier this year, so it's probably a lot more by now. Users can access almost 40 different locations in that local land service area, which means, as I mentioned, users can generally find a suitable location that matches some of the conditions, at least to their own enterprise. They get a brief overview of those different components of the system around soil moisture, pasture conditions, and weather and seasonal climate forecast information. So they can get a very quick snapshot, but then they can dig into each one of those components, dig into the detail. And specifically around different management questions, this tool can address quite a few different types of questions at different timescales. So these are just a few examples of those. Some of those questions, like how likely are we to expect cold conditions for lambs, which is a big risk for lamb mortality. That's the sort of question we can address with our weather forecast at that sort of 1 to 7 day forecast time period. And we can also, we're also taking that weather forecast and translating it into a chill index, right out to, what is my pasture growth looking like this season? Is it going to be average? We can present a longer term forecast for that right out to the 4-month period. And that's quite a different forecast, but it's translated into a green available herbage, which is reflective of what's on the ground for farmers. And just to dig into the detail a little bit more, just to give you a bit of an idea of what goes into a pasture forecast system such as this. As I mentioned, obviously there's a lot of climate and observed model data, and that includes forecasts. We've also building into it being able to ingest on-farm weather sensor data, and that's coming into later versions of the system. We take in obviously information around the soil types of those areas, the pasture composition and those things, but we also try and mimic the farm system. So we've got a lot of different details around the way that the farm's managed, and then that can also go into the scenario that is produced in the grass grow model, which is a pasture ruminant model, which really is the engine room of this forecast system. And then that goes through some processing and then is made available through the farming forecaster. And it's updated every day. And I'll show you a little bit about what that forecast actually looks like. So in this example, it's just an example of a forecast made in 1st of March. There's a representation by the black line here of just the pasture growth, which is measured as green available herbage here. That's measured throughout that month, so the farmer can see what the conditions have been like to date. And this forecast in this example is given in the later period of March, so they can see how they've tracked in the current month. At the start of that month, a probabilistic forecast is provided, and that's really just the the conditions in this case, in the red line, the yellow line, and the blue line of the 10% expected, lowest 10% of pasture biomass conditions expected, the yellow line being the 50% or the average condition, and then the 90th percent is the top 10% of pasture biomass conditions expected. So what that's showing here really, and the shaded data behind that's the long-term historic data, what that's showing is, given that we've started March in very high pasture biomass conditions, over the next 3 to 4 months, we're not expecting conditions to drop below the long-term average. And that's really important orientation for the farmer, but also information for planning. You know, am I going to expect a good or bad year or bad season? And as I mentioned, there's text summary on the right, provides that information in a different format. So what's relevant also is not just to be able to provide information on pasture biomass or how much pastures are going to grow, but also be able to manage that pasture. And because we have livestock as an active part in this model, and we can actually understand what that grazing pressure is going to be on that pasture at any one time, we can provide data on ground cover. So in this example, it's a similar 3 to 4 month forecast, but we've given information on the expected ground cover given the amount of pasture growth we have, the stocking rate that we've provided to the model, and other climate conditions, what that ground cover trajectory is going to look like. So in this case, as you saw previously, it was a relatively wet period. In this case, we're starting at pretty high ground cover. It's not expected over those 3 to 4 months, those probability at 10, 50 and 90% expected to drop anywhere below about a 90% value of ground cover. But we can look at thresholds such as the 70% ground cover, which is, you know, regarded as a industry best practice. We can look at what the likelihood or chance is of our ground cover at that particular location dropping below. So this is a really valuable tool in farmers being more proactive about managing ground cover targets. So in conclusion, and to provide some of the sort of where to now for Farming Forecaster, we see Farming Forecaster set up in a way, and that goes to the way the software has been built and the systems that sit behind that, is a way that it can be replicated to other regions. And so it's acting as a blueprint. We've built these Farming Forecaster web application for the tablelands and Monero regions, but we want to be able to roll that out elsewhere. And there is already interest from other local land service. Hunter, for example, is going to be deploying 19 soil moisture probes, and they are going to set up a similar Farming Forecaster version for their locations and their region. So that's very exciting. And what that does also is it means that they're not having to wear the costs of building a brand new website and all the other costs that go along with that. They can basically replicate some of the learnings and some of the information systems that we've set up. So what this is really saying is that we're looking at sustainable business models, and coming from CSIRO, that's important that we do this, that we are able to deliver these sorts of systems long term. We're not just, you know, getting the grant funding and that at the end of it, this tool folds and you know, becomes more of shelfware. And what we're also doing is we've been secured funding to expand the modelling capacity. And what that will do is help us help drought preparedness through drought lot feeding in the model. We're also improving the forecast all the time, and we can take on the Bureau's new seasonal forecasts as they come on board. So it's a very exciting space to work, and it's been a great collaboration between all these organisations. And I'll reiterate, this was a smart farming project funded by the National Landcare program, and it's really been quite successful to date. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Thanks for that, Patrick, and thanks to you too, John, for sharing your perspective on it. It looks like a very exciting tool. We do have a couple of questions coming through. I had a couple of questions myself, but look, I'll go straight to the question panel. We'll kick off with Danny Penton-Gill. We've only got 4 minutes for the questions, so I'll keep it pretty tight for the answers if you could, guys. What sort of acceptance are you finding with landholders? Is there an increase in landholder knowledge and adoption? What was the best method you found for community landholder adoption?
Patrick,
Do you want to have a go at that,
start?
John?
Yeah, you go with that.
I'd probably speak from having, I guess, limited contact with landholders and producers post releasing the farming forecaster. But what I can say is that user or the farmer consultation period we did when we were trying to come up with what were the best ways to display and utilize the information available to us, that was already receiving a lot of interest. We had a lot of, I guess, a reference group of those farmers that really wanted to have input into the tool. So that's ensured at least that we know we've touched quite a diverse group of farmers with different levels of enterprise, different types of farms, but different types of, I guess, ways that they interpret the information. And I think that's really allowed us to get pretty good feedback when it comes to user numbers and reach a wider audience than just the members that were already, familiar with some of the concepts in the farming forecaster.
One of the things we did do was had a lot of workshops after it was established around the region, and they were very well supported. The other thing that we've found is that a lot of farmers have been approaching us about having probes on their site, so that we're just, for example, in the Tablelands is putting in another 3 or 4 sites with that process. So there's been a very, very strong interest in it.
And just on that too, John, I'll jump to a comment from Jeff Minchin. He's basically said Riverina Local Land Services are adding 20 sites for the Eastern Riverina also this financial year.
That's fabulous. That's really good.
We've got about a minute and a half to go, so I'll try and squeeze in one more question. What's the cost?
The cost to the farmer?
Don Bruce is asking what's the cost, to the farmer.
Well, the cost to the farmer, it's been sponsored by, we mentioned earlier, local industry has helped sponsor it. Also, there's no cost to farmers. Monero, I think, is charging $400 for their sites, and that's a lot of that is for maintenance and so forth. So it depends on different areas of what that region wants to charge. For example, there's a fair bit of development going on as well. So what we're also charging for as the Tablelands farming system as a Monero is new developments. We're getting a bit of dollars from the new development to actually extend the farming forecaster. So new programs that are coming on to enhance the program, we're sponsoring that as well.
And if anyone's got any interest in this, can they get in contact with you, Patrick or John?
Certainly, or they can just go to any of those websites. It was on one of Patrick's slides, or you can go to Tablelands Farming System. Monero Farming Systems has got it all on there. Yeah,
great, guys. Look, we've run out of time, but I wanted to thank you both for your very, very interesting presentation, and also thanks to Jennifer for hers to kickstart the day. Look, we're moving to a lunch break now, so go grab some lunch, grab a coffee, and make sure you visit our exhibitors, the guys who are helping support this conference as well. We'll be back here at 1:05 Eastern Seaboard time, so I'll see you back then. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Luke.
Yeah.
Thank you.